There's a new tax audit sheriff in town. This is the Issues Watch podcast. Hi, I'm Jeff Kazerman, Vice President of Government Relations at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to the Issues Watch podcast. Today, I'm talking with Michael Bryan, CPA. Many of you may recognize that name since he was the director of the New Jersey Division of Taxation from 2010 to 2015. After a stint in public accounting, he's now back at the division. Let's find out what he's been up to. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks very much, Jeff.
So, Mike, you've had a 30-year accounting career spanning government, public accounting, and industry, including 5 years as a director of the New Jersey Division of Taxation. So why did you leave private industry to enter government as the division director in 2010? And what brought you back after working in public accounting for the past 5.5 years?
So I left the private sector. I left the corporate space. I had spent 16 years working in a corporate tax department and had an interesting experience of professional and personal challenges. And that was really a lot of fun. It was a good group of people. I just got to the point where I really wanted to do something different. And I reached out to some friends who put me in contact with the Division of Taxation. And, you know, a couple of months later, there I was trying to sort out what it meant to be the director of the Division of Taxation. And that was a really exciting time for me. It's a good group of professionals here at the division. I left the division after a couple of months short of 5 years and joined the public accounting. I spent 5 years with Deloitte doing some really interesting work for their Washington national tax function. So that was a lot of fun. I had responsibility for clients, and we did a lot of teaching in the WNT group, which was really a lot of fun. I left Deloitte, about 2 years ago. Not by choice. That was really a COVID-driven outcome.
Yeah. Right.
So, I was from the Deloitte firm. Across all the firms, there were some 5,500 people in the same pool that I was in. So I was not alone. But so I started a conversation about a year ago this week with the Division of Taxation. And, I'm at a point in my career. Been doing this a long time. I know what I'm good at and I know what I like to do. And talked to some friends here at the division, and they were looking to fill this role to run the audit subgroup here within the Division of Taxation. And it worked out great for all of us in the end. And, I've been an audit guy since the 80s. I started my tax career in '87 with the IRS. So I come to this with an interesting perspective and a lot of experience, and I'm here a little over 2 months, and it's been great.
The accounting profession, as I'm sure you know, is grappling with the staffing shortage. From your perspective, having worked in a number of different sectors, what steps does the profession and organizations like the NJCPA, what do they need to do to help build up the CPA pipeline?
I think we have to encourage young business students to go into the accounting career, right? Whether it's a tax track or a test track or economics or any number of specialties, we have to be, as senior professionals, we have to be mentors to these folks and disabuse them of the myths and the legends about what it's like to be a CPA. And sure, there are situations and environments where you'll work hard, and we all work hard when we're young. We work hard throughout our entire careers, but I think it's important to communicate with those folks that a background in accounting can be a really strong foundation for many, many things in finance, and all sorts of professions. So I think it's important to sort of set the example as we do, and get engaged and be that mentor, and talk to the young people. I spend a lot of time walking around the building here in Trenton talking to folks. And, it's important to me that we encourage those folks to stay in the profession. I'm trying to find a way to get more people certified here at the division so we can find a way to sign off on their experience and get some active licenses made here at the Division of Taxation. So we all sort of have to participate in the process, and I think that'll make the difference.
So in your new role, you're heading up the Audit Division. And tax audit strikes fear into many a CPA and taxpayer. So what should our audience know about the work your team is doing, and what should they do if they receive notice of an audit?
So some of our priorities are not going to focus on individual taxpayers. One of the priorities I'm focusing on right now is really on large and multinational corporate tax filers. We're focused on the CBT 100U, which is our new unitary filing. We've got 2 years in hand, and we're working on a lot of training here at the division. One of the things I've said to the groups that are going through the training is that this is new to New Jersey, but it is not new to a lot of the other practitioners and a lot of the corporate filers that are filing in other jurisdictions. They've been doing this for a very long time. So I'm trying to get my people up to speed. We're also working on case classification. So appropriate level work gets assigned to appropriately experienced auditors, and case identification, right? Case selection. We're trying to develop a robust selection model. So we're selecting returns that show potential for adjustment. And that's important because we don't want to waste anybody's time, ours included. So that's one of the priorities we're focused on right now at the outset. As far as getting a notice, I like to quote Douglas Adams here. And Douglas Adams, if you know, wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And what Douglas Adams said, he said, don't panic, right? So the audit process is generally, when it works well, it's generally predictable, and it's rational and it's fair. So what I say to people is, if you had a professional that helped you prepare your return, talk to that professional. They are likely happy to help you work through the audit process. If you did your return on your own, then I'm sure there are easy ways to reach out to tax professionals for that assistance if you don't have any experience and you're an individual faced for the first time with a tax audit. It can be daunting and intimidating, but in the end, we've got a lot of folks here that focus on tax examinations. It's a big part of what we do here at the division. And we provide a lot of guidance through our taxpayer service area, through our hotline. And it's important, if you end up with a complex situation, to talk to tax professionals.
Yeah, I know if I was ever audited, first thing I would do is hire a team of CPAs. I let the experts handle these things. So
Yep.
are there some, well, let me ask you this first. How many audits does the division conduct in a typical year?
So it really depends on the tax type, right? So the personal income tax, our gross income tax here in New Jersey, we receive something in the neighborhood of 4.5 million returns annually. We do a lot of audits in that category. A lot of them are programmatic. For example, we get data from the IRS and we'll send out notices where the IRS has made a change, or if taxpayers have amended their individual federal 1040 and we don't get a similar amendment, we'll be able to match those up and send out a contact letter to taxpayers in those situations. So we send many thousands of those. We do a lot of matching programs with W-2s and other data sources. So our individual tax audits, we do many, many thousands, but they're largely done by correspondence. So you'll get a letter that says basically what we think went wrong and some information that you should provide. In a lot of cases, those things can just be resolved and they'll go away.
So that's a very minimal audit. I mean, could almost say that's missing information, right?
Yes, in a lot of cases it is. It's a small error, or somebody forgot to include a 1099 or a source of retirement income or interest or what have you. The other end of the spectrum, we do audit small, medium, large, and large multinational businesses, and we spent a lot of time auditing businesses and their filing of sales and use taxes. There's a lot of confusion around that area about what's taxable and what's not. Use tax is a confusing topic, so we do try to set taxpayers right in those categories. Corporate business tax, we spend a lot of time. Sometimes I like to say it's an inordinate amount of time engaging with tax practitioners on the CBT. It is the smallest of our three largest sources of revenue, but never having done a time study here, I think we probably spend most of our intellectual audit hours talking about the CBT. It is a complex topic, and we do, I will say, many hundreds of CBT audits. So again, it really depends on the tax type, how many taxpayers there are, and how much time we spend on them, and how many matters we run.
Are there some common errors or issues that result in an audit? You have a few tips for taxpayers and tax preparers to help avoid being audited.
Be thorough and file timely, right? So make sure you've got all of your documents together when you sit down to prepare your return, or when you prepare to give those documents to your practitioner. Make sure you have all your W-2s, 1099s for your bank accounts, brokerage accounts, all of that sort of activity. Make sure you roll over your 401ks timely into your IRA accounts. Do all those things in a real careful manner, and things should come out okay. That's best case. Like I said, there's some myth around this that if you behave in a certain fashion, you'll never get audited, and we don't audit most taxpayers. That's true. So, but there are, it's just a careful attention to detail can really end up in an easier result for taxpayers.
So what's the myth part that I'll never be audited? Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
exactly.
Oh,
if
okay.
you do a certain set of things, you'll never get picked up for audit. That's
Okay. I got it. Are there any interesting audit stories you can share? And obviously, we're not looking for names of companies or people.
I mean, early in my career, we did a lot of appeals work. I had the lucky experience of hiring Marty Ginsburg, who was Ruth Bader Ginsburg's husband back then. And Marty was a really interesting guy. I only got to meet him 2 or 3 times, so I can't claim to have ever known him well, but he routinely referred to himself as a school teacher, which was really a treat because he taught at Georgetown Law. Just a really super intellect, just a really lucky opportunity for me to meet somebody, just a intellectual giant, really nice guy, approachable. The other story I like to tell is when I did my first tour here at the division, is how I'm describing my first stop here. I did send myself a notice. It was a mismatch.
Wait, on purpose?
I rolled my 401k over into an IRA, and for whatever reason, it didn't. The ID numbers didn't match up, and I sent myself a notice. That was sort of an existential moment. And at one point, I sent my mother and some of her friends notices, something to do, as I recall, many years ago, it was something to do with a homestead rebate. So she called me and was none too happy, and was sort of relaying the story of some of her friends getting similar notices. So guess what? It happens to the best of us. So
yeah, besides, we got to treat everybody equally, right?
That's right. Yeah.
How prevalent do you think tax fraud is in New Jersey? And you can handle it the same way you did before, individuals versus corporations.
Yeah. So I think New Jersey is probably not a lot different than most other states. There's a lot of abuse in certain tax categories, and there's things that look like abuse in certain tax categories too. I think one of the sad outcomes that we'll often see is in the context of small business. And very often what
Yeah.
happens, a small business will be collecting sales tax and withholding wage income taxes and fail to remit because they're not as busy as they want to be, and they need to keep their vendors paid, keep the lights on, and they always go into a process like that intending to catch up later, and it gets harder and harder and harder, and that balance due, if you will, gets bigger and bigger, and they start to get scared and don't know what to do about it. And the next thing they know, they've got an audit notice from us. That's not fraud in the purest
Right.
sense. There's what we call tax gap, that underground economy. A lot of people do business in the form of cash. So I don't think New
Yes.
Jersey's any worse off than any other state, but we do have a fairly robust group of folks here that prosecute criminal tax cases. We do have a robust training program here at the division where we teach our people what the badges of fraud are and how to identify real fraudulent behavior and how to build a case and refer it over to our Office of Criminal Investigation, to the point where the Attorney General's office, we don't litigate our own tax cases at the division, the AG's office does. And there's a pretty stringent process that a case like that has to go through before the AG's office will take up a criminal prosecution, but it does happen. So we're careful about it, and we work with other jurisdictions, and it's all kinds of tax types. It's more prevalent in the transaction taxes like excise taxes or sales and use taxes. Those are easier for us to prosecute
Right.
at the state level. And we do have a relationship with the IRS in the area too. So we're familiar with the folks that run the OCI, their criminal investigation groups here in Trenton and in Newark and the region. So we do communicate with those folks as well.
So, I would say 80% of the time that I have a small contractor coming to my house, let's say, to I don't know, fix the water heater, and
Yep.
it costs $300, or the guy who comes to, spray the garage to get rid of those, those huge crickets that look like frogs.
Yep.
They always say to me, so well, if you pay me cash, it's 240. If you pay me on your credit card or whatever, it's 270.
Yeah.
Is that fraud? Somebody who does that on a regular basis? I mean, criminal fraud, or like,
it really depends on how often they're doing it. It's always interesting to me because I'm not immune to that conversation also. I do get folks
right,
that will make similar offers to me, and I will always look at them and say, hey, you really don't want to make me that offer.
right,
I will tell you, it's certainly an indicator that they have a history of behaving like that. What we would really have to do is determine whether or not that cash is going into a bank or is going toward buying a beach house or a boat or a new Corvette. So it's not necessarily a guarantee of fraud depending on the volume, but it's
right,
an indicator that we'd be sensitive to here at the division, because
right.
our people get those offers all the time. They
Yeah,
write
I
down
mean,
names and ID numbers and license numbers, and we make an internal referral and follow it up. So
we understand the division is now under contract for a major upgrade to modernize their IT systems. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
yeah, it's really exciting stuff. I will say this was something I started back in late 2012. I started that conversation with the treasurer's office toward setting up a request for proposal. And here I am, a 7-year hiatus away from the division, and I come back and they've completed the procurement, and we're beginning the process literally in the last 3-4 weeks. The vendor
Wow.
is on site. We're starting to really put the project to work. We've begun a lot of the research and the early stage defining of the project and identifying processes and systems and how the systems communicate between the Division of Taxation and the Division of Revenue and Enterprise Services. These are big old complex systems, and there's a lot to think about. It's a multi-year process.
Okay.
And what we're doing, we're trying to front load some of those tax types that'll have a larger impact on the state as a whole. So we're looking at that personal income tax, our gross income tax, in addition to sales and use tax, early in the process, among some other things, so we can kind of walk before we run. So it's an important project here at the division. New Jersey is one of the later states,
Yeah.
I will say, to go through this process, but it's really great news that this is happening. There's a lot of things that we're going to change from a process perspective here at the division, and I think what we call the ITS, the integrated tax system, we're gonna come up with a contest or something to come up with a clever acronym, what to call it. But there's a lot of people that are going to learn how to do things a lot differently, and it's going to be a catalyst for some real cultural change here at the division.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, ever since I started working with the CPA Society 30 years ago, it's been a problem with the computers and IT, and not just at your department, across the state.
Yeah,
I-
it's really a burden, these old systems. They're just so limited in what we can and can't do, and what we can. There's no flexibility to them. So if we
Right.
want to make some changes, it's really hard to do it. And this will allow us, by modernizing these systems, it'll allow us a lot more flexibility, and we'll be a lot more nimble in what we can do and how long it takes to do it.
Right. Right. Well, that about wraps it up. Thanks again for joining us today, Mike.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening and watching. You can access New Jersey Division of Taxation's website at njtaxation.org, and you can follow them on Twitter at NJ_taxation.